Hi, I'm Carlin Holbrook. I'm a John Maxwell Team certified coach, teacher, trainer, speaker, published author, and influencer with more than 25 years of global leadership experience. If there's one thing I've seen firsthand time and time again, it's that the best leaders inspire others to follow their purpose and their passions, while the influence of a bad leader can literally tear down people's potential. Join me for a few sips of leadership tips that will help you become a better leader by first conquering. Oh, hello, sippers. I am so excited that I am about just a few days away from taking a vacation and going aboard the Disney Cruise Line, Southampton to Southampton cruise to Norway, Iceland, and Liverpool, England, and all places we have not been before. Been very blessed. As you people who know me know, I love to travel. I've been to, I think, 40 countries now. So this will add a couple more to our list of countries we haven't been to yet. So we're excited to experience that. And for Todd and I, my husband and I, one of the biggest things we love to experience is the food and, of course, the coffee, because everywhere in Europe does coffee better than America. Change my mind. Just richer, more robust. I love the espresso style of just smaller and just more flavorful, and I don't add sugar and any of that other crap to water it down. I'm just like, yes, please be good coffee. And again, I'm still doing my homework on coffee shops in Iceland and Norway, but so I might, talk about that a little bit when I come back. But one thing that we always talk about before we travel is got to make sure to understand what are the local customs, what are things that we need to be aware of. I usually try to learn a few words of the language. I will say Norwegian and Icelandic are very difficult languages. So maybe I'll try a few words just from, to see if I can do a few greetings. But it also makes us always go, oh, now we have to deal with other bad tourists. And unfortunately, we've had so many encounters through our travels of just bad and disrespectful and rude tourists. And yes, it is often Americans or Canadians or, but not always, because definitely have seen bad tourists of every country and nationality. I know one time we did a river cruise several years ago, and one of our stops was we went into Salzburg, and we had the best tour guide. He was so fun. He wore a very traditional dress. He had the little handlebar mustache, and he was so full of knowledge. It was just amazing. And then there was this family of people. I don't know. I don't remember where they were from. I think somewhere South America, but they were just so rude. And maybe it was because they didn't understand him, or, that's highly possible, but then stopped talking because other people were entranced with all of his great stories and learning about the historical points he was pointing out. We did like a walking tour around Salzburg. They just cared about, they had reservations for something. And anyway, they were just the rudest people on the face of the planet. It was so gross. I know another time we went on a cruise, not Disney, another cruise line, to be clear, because I don't really see this happen on Disney, which is good. And I'll never forget it. We were going back to the ship from one of the island stops. It was out here in the Caribbean. And a mom had passed out drunk, like just a hot mess, and had to be carted back to the ship. And her two little kids, were sitting in the back of the cart. It was so sad and embarrassing. I'm like, what is wrong with people? I just can't get over that. And I've been to China and Hong Kong and Japan, several times, and it just floors me how rude and disrespectful and entitled people can be when they go to other cultures. I know there's Kyoto specifically has been in the news a lot for banning tourists from their old city, their geisha district, because of the behavior of tourists. And I've seen articles where tourists are, etching their names in their ancient bamboo and, temples. And I'm just like, who does that? What is wrong with you? Someone please ban them from the country or ever getting on a plane ever again. There has to be consequences for this. And I know that some people, this will be a controversial statement, I'm sure, but hey, my podcast, my rules. The whole Brittany Griner thing that upset people so much because she went to Russia and to play basketball and had, I think it was cannabis oil or CBD oil or something and some vaping stuff in her bag. And that is like a federal offense, whatever their version of that is, and was arrested. And people here were like, how dare you, Russia? It's so awful, Russia. Like, okay, from my American lens and filter, was that too harsh? 100%. I agree. Like, that is like, really? That's going to be that harsh of a thing? However, here's the controversial part. She should have done her freaking homework and realized that that stuff was illegal to bring into that country. And shame on anybody else who might have been advising the team or helping them with travel. I mean, if you're traveling for your job, they should give you training. They should give you resources. They should help you understand, here's the cultural things that you need to be aware of. Please, go and look on the government site to make sure you're not bringing something into the country that's illegal. I mean, I do that even with Hong Kong, even though I was there for 4 months on assignment. I've been back several times as a guest and for work. And, I think it's Zyrtec. Like, there's some really fundamental things that we use. I know a lot. Myself personally uses Zyrtec because I have allergies. And you're not allowed to bring Zyrtec into the country. You're not allowed to bring certain types of medicines, and most of it I think is in bulk form, right? But it was funny, like even my last trip for work with Japan, I was talking to one of my peers and she was like, oh my gosh, you can't even like bring Benadryl or like stuff that we would consider like no big deal, over the counter kind of things. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure they mean more in bulk, but to apply to their rules, I make sure that whatever my allergy medicine is not a banned kind, and I put it in a small little baggie with just enough for me to take each day, and I've never had a problem. So leave the bottles at home, leave the big stuff at home. Like, don't seem like you're transporting drugs into another country, if that makes sense. Like, follow the freaking rules, people. So honestly, I wasn't all that sad for her because I thought, well, you should have done your homework, and you shouldn't go into other countries with this sense of like, I can do whatever I want because I'm an American, I'm a Canadian, I'm an Australian, I'm a whoever I am. It's like, no, their rules are their rules. If you are going into another country, you should abide by their laws. Whether you're an American citizen or not, that shouldn't matter. And if you don't like their laws and you don't agree with their laws, then don't freaking go. Whether it's your job or not, you can make those choices. And if you do go, recognize you're going to have to make some concessions because that is their laws, their rules. End of story. I don't know why that's so difficult. Yes, it is black and white in my opinion. It's like there are definitely countries on this earth. I mean, I've been to China and I've been to Russia. I don't agree with their governments at all. I think communism is the worst form of government possible. Change my mind. Look at Chairman Mao and look at all the horrible things he's done. Look at what's going on with Russia today. Like, that's my personal opinion. But I've been to those countries and you don't see me running up and down their streets, like waving an American flag, telling them to go to hell. Like, just not going to do it because I'm stepping foot into their soil. Doesn't mean I have to agree. In my mind, in my heart, in my head, I don't agree with their principles. I've gone there for work or for travel, but I'm still respectful that they have that right to create a government in what they see fit and what their form. It's not my business. It would be my business if, I think, going to like genocide level and all that kind of stuff, that's, the world's business in that sense. That's a human thing that we need to talk about. And boy, would that be a whole nother podcast. I'm talking about traveling and tourism fundamentally. I just think it's so sad when you see all of these countries. I mean, it's little things too. It's like, when you go and you visit, using Japan as that example, if you go to someone's house, take off your shoes. Again, be respectful of when you go to restaurants, even in Europe, which many of us in America have European, that's our, excuse me, that is where we come from descendant wise, that's my heritage, my husband's heritage too. It's like, but they serve beer warm. Americans tend to like it cold. They have cider. It's also a different kind of beer. It has a lot more alcohol content. Like, it's also like they don't have ice like we do. They also don't serve like we do, right? They don't have the same customer service in some countries because they don't have a tipping culture. It's like these are all those things that you need to read and understand before you go abroad. Oh my gosh. Anyway, some of this just drives me so crazy. And it's like, I'm sorry if you like a lot of ice in your drink and you like supersized everything, but that's not here. So for the week you're here, or the 5 days or whatever, the month, recognize that that's who they are and that's their culture. Those are their norms. And by the way, it's kind of fun to live in their culture and their norms for a while. It's different, right? But it's so fascinating to me. And I was reading a BBC story recently about tourism, and it's like this seems to be happening more and more. You hear these stories of these really bad tourists in different places in the world, or tourism like flooding, small cities. Like I know Venice has struggled, and others, through whatever types of, whether it's cruise lines, etc. But what I think is interesting is in this story, I know there's so much pent up international travel demand after COVID, right? So what was cool about this story was like, it's not that tourism's gotten worse. It's just, it has volume increased, but there's a lot to say, like, this is for a short-lived time. This will spread out over time. This is the pent up demand of the post-COVID years, which I think makes a lot of sense. And some of the governments are instilling, though, awful like tourism taxes onto people, thinking that, well, that's going to make it better and that's going to help. And I actually think that's a terrible thing to do to people, because it's not even giving back to the local economy or the local businesses. It's just benefiting the governments. And God knows, we know governments just freaking pocket the taxes and steal from the people a lot of times. And that's going to also then deter tourism. And, it's like, that's not helping anything either. And actually, this gal in the article who's quoted, I'm going to probably butcher her first name, and my apologies, Antje Martens. She's a trainer for the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, has a PhD and a PhD candidate in the tourism discipline at the University of Queensland Business School, says it's actually a question of better tourism management, not a better type of tourist. And I thought that was really interesting. Because what she's arguing, I'm just going to paraphrase it, is that if you keep taxing people, tourism taxes, or raising prices, you're actually then making tourism only accessible to rich people. And I'm going to quote her now. She says, I see travel as a force for good. We don't want to make it only possible for rich people to have these mind-opening experiences, but they need to be able to do it in a responsible way so we don't ruin the planet at the same time, or ruin traditions and heritage at the same time, and cultures. And so that makes sense, right? It's like, how do you manage the influx of tourism without increasing costs, increasing prices, and taxing people out of the ability to see the world and have these global experiences? Because I know, like for me, the first time I spent time in Asia, especially with cultures so different from ours, it was such a mind-opening experience. It was amazing. It's life-changing. It's life-changing because it takes you out of your bubble. It takes the ethnocentricity that I think in a lot of ways Americans have. And again, I'm not dissing America. I do love my country. I'm happy I live here. I appreciate our freedom more, actually, after traveling the world, that we are so blessed to have so much freedom of expression and religion, and just, to be ourselves and to live our lives. And we can be, there's no class system or caste system. And I know people are like, yes, there is. Like, okay, go to India, like go to other countries. And yeah, you still can, if you work hard, you can still have the wonderful, beautiful immigrant American dream here, which, I know my grandfathers and grandparents did. They came here, they worked up from nothing to being able to raise a family and own land and do the thing. And I still believe that that's possible here. And by the way, so many other people do. Otherwise, why do they all want to come here, right? But anyway, my point, I got a little rabbit traily, but my point being is that seeing the way other countries are and the way they exist and experiencing their cultures is just, it's life altering in the way that it's like, wow, people do things so differently, but also we're still at our core all humans. There's still so many universal truths and common grounds too, which is also really interesting. And oh man, the world's food, culinary dreams around the earth of just all the different amazing cuisines, and so great. And what's great about it too is like, here's what I also don't understand is like when we travel, it's about respecting their belief system and their customs and cultures. Like I'm a Christian, but I've been to a lot of Buddhist temples, and I've been to a lot of Shinto temples, and different places of worship throughout the world, and even within the own Christian based denominations of Eastern Orthodox, and we've been to like several synagogues, like, oh man, beautiful synagogues in Hungary, and even Russian Orthodox churches, and just all different kinds of just beautiful places of worship. And I don't have to believe it to appreciate it. Like, that's not what people are asking you to do. It's to respect it and appreciate it and understand and respect their local customs. And yeah, I'm taking deep breaths because I just get so frustrated when I see these stories about tourists, because a few bad apples are always going to spoil it for the whole bunch. And you're probably thinking, Carlin, what does this have to do with leadership? It has everything to do with leadership, because this is about leading yourself. And leading yourself is a part of leading yourself is leading yourself through experiencing other cultures when you travel, and experiencing other ways of life, and being curious about them. This is all about how you lead yourself. And for anybody who wants to go and vandalize like temples and ruin things in other people's countries, because they don't care. Those people need to be like banned or shipped to another country where they do stick them in a gulag, they do stick them in a jail. Maybe they'll learn to be a little more respectful. Like, these are not the people who should be allowed to travel, in my opinion. I don't know how you suss them out from the rest of the tourists, but like, if you break a law in another country and that's their law, then maybe your hand should be chopped off. You shouldn't have stole something. Anyway, I'm going to get into some sips because, I could go on and on about this, but truly, this is leading yourself, when we're traveling. And by the way, traveling is not just international. Traveling can also mean, like, I was born and raised in California. I live in Florida. When I've gone to Georgia and some of the southern states and even the Northeast, I mean, talk about various cultures, right? Within our own with our own United States, there's so many different cultures and traditions and customs and way they do things. So even in your own backyard, even, just across the state borders, it's important to be open-minded and understand, what makes sense. New Yorkers are very direct and no nonsense, and Southerners are a little more bless their hearts and maybe a little more passive aggressive and conflict avoidant. Again, I'm not trying to stereotype. I'm just giving generalizations of what the culture and the societal norms of certain regional areas of our country tend to be, right? Californians, we're kind of, I think, in the middle, very laid back, but also kind of direct and no nonsense to a point too. Maybe not as much as New Yorkers, but again, same vein. But I could go on and on, right? All 50 of our states, very, very different. Anyway, let's get into some sips of how we lead ourselves when we think about traveling and experiencing other cultures and customs. So first sip is a spirit of inclusion. Don't say other people's cultures are weird. They're just different. Respect their traditions. Respect that they come at things in a different way. Nothing annoys me more when I hear somebody go, oh, that's weird. That to me is an offensive term, because it's saying that because that's unknown to you or you don't like that, then it's odd. Then it's off the card. A great example, somebody told me once, who had taught English in Korea, and this story stuck with me, that Korean, like, we might think that there is some culture in Korea that eat dogs. It's a certain type of dog. It's not like, a little dachshund or a golden retriever or something. Again, I think it's, oh God, like, please don't eat dogs, right? Like, that's me. However, they think it's weird that we eat turkey. And I'm like, turkey. Like, that's pretty standard for Americans, right? So just a case in point of how different people can be. All right, second sip. Before you go anywhere outside of your house, your bubble, your little community that you know so well because that's where you live and work every day, anywhere, read up and research customs. There is just no excuse in the age of search to not Use a social media platform, use your favorite search engine to learn about customs, culture. There's so many YouTube videos about what to do and what not to do when you visit X country. So many things. And look at a lot of them so you can get varying, and make sure they're by a local or a local expert or something too, not just rando people trying to make money off of doing something. Like, truly research like what to do in those locations, what's expected, and do your best to respect those local customs and culture. All right. And then the last one I'll say is, hey, if you don't know, ask. Before making assumptions when you are traveling, and before you step in it, let's be honest, like, take a step back and say, I'm going to ask a local. And oftentimes I have found locals want to talk about their country, their culture, their people. They love it when you get curious in a very authentic and real way with them. It's okay to ask questions. Don't make assumptions. You want to make sure that you show that, hey, I respect you enough to learn, to learn about you and what we should do and shouldn't do. And I can't tell you how many amazing conversations we've had with people that we've just met, like in coffee shops or in lounges or restaurants or museums, because we're not afraid to just go up to them and ask. And in fact, I remember the one that pops in my head the most, because it was in our vacation last year. We spent some time in Barcelona, and I'll never forget this guy. We're actually Instagram friends now. He was amazing. We were chatting just outside, sipping coffee in a promenade area, and he actually struck up the conversation with us. And it was so great. He's like, hey, you were just in the Gaudi house too, and how did you like it? And he wasn't from here either. He actually lived in Scandinavia. And we just had like a half hour of amazing conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, learning about each other, sharing, just what we were doing. He was there on holiday as well. And it was so enriching when you can talk to locals and learn. And again, he was a tourist, but again, like, we were learning together and sharing together what our experiences was in Barcelona. It was so great. So, hey, remember, like, the world does not revolve around you. And yes, we all have our preferences, our biases, our filters, our everything. Just when you go into another's culture or country or city, please know that you are both not only representing who you are and where you come from, but just be a good tourist, be a good traveler, be a good, global traveler and friend. Lead yourself when traveling and experiencing other cultures. And believe you me, there's nothing better. Thank you for having a cup of coffee with me. For more sips and tips, connect with me on social and follow Leader Sips on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And don't forget to visit my website, carlinholbrook.com. Until next time, keep on brewing.